this is pretty exciting. I mean, this is a project very from home, very from the heart. But what took so long?
What took so long? Well, it's interesting that my father was a filmmaker and he made lots of documentaries. And here we are, almost 40 years after he passed, and we're making a documentary about him. But it wasn't until recently that somebody approached us saying that they wanted to make a documentary. It was actually Bill Ayers, who co-founded Why Hunger with my father in 1975, who was talking to Rick Korn, who was one of the producers, and they were talking about different films. And Bill said to Rick, why don't you make a film about Harry Chapin? And then that started the process. So then Rick came to my mother and I and proposed the film and told us what he wanted to focus on. And we were really excited, and we couldn't be happier with how things turned out.
And what was there's a relationship, right? With your dad and Rick?
Well, yes, going back to Long Island in the mid 70s, Rick was in high school, and my father spent a lot of time visiting different middle schools and high schools and colleges. He just loved to perform in front of younger audiences and talk to them after the concert. So he went to Rick's high school in Plainview, and Rick was at the concert and he was blown away. And he just became, a crazy fan from then on, and had attended, I think, another concert and just said, this guy is one of a kind. And so I think that planted the seed way back then.
And speaking of the gentleman,
hello? Oh my God. So sorry. Bad timing for your internet and lights to go off. It just came back on, but I'm doing this on my phone. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. We were just, Jason was sharing your relationship with his father.
Yes, Harry came to my high school in 1974 and put on a great concert and a great lecture about hunger and poverty. And here we are all these years later, 45 years later, and we're doing this.
I was asking him what took so long.
I asked the same question, and when I asked that question, they said, I don't know, why don't you do it?
So one of the highlights that I loved about the documentary was you guys, that was different for this documentary, was you actually had some of the interviewers and even Harry himself be part of narrating it. Whose idea was it? I mean, it was a great idea.
Well, I wrote the film, and Harry just jumps off the screen. So using Harry any time in any way is a plus. And his brother Tom was a great narrator too. He can fill you in on the early days and a little bit of the behind the scenes. So I think the combination of Harry and Tom was really very compelling, and we were very fortunate to have it.
For your title, how did you come up with it? That was really creative. That was actually part of the documentary where, Harry himself is saying the words of Harry Chapin, "We're in doubt, do something." And then as I was watching, it dawned on me, I think, why you guys used that line as a title, but you gotta maximize what we have.
Yeah, that was Harry's philosophy. We're only here for a very short period of time on Earth, and it's important. I happen to agree with this philosophy, but it's important that we do all we can to help. He believed in a participatory democracy society, in essence. Help your fellow man. Right, and that is the message of this film. When in doubt, do something. Don't sit around complaining. Make the world. You can make the world a better place, and he certainly has. I mean, if you think about the fact that he started Why Hunger in 1975, and here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and his work is to this day saving millions of lives is pretty incredible.
I mean, we talk about how a lot of the artists are using their platform to bring up important subjects, but to me, from watching this documentary, I think he's the leader. I mean, he he's probably one of the first to start this, right? Using his fame, his popularity to bring up attention and awareness.
Well,
Oh,
you know, I think it was really a collective effort. I mean, obviously, my father was the one who was getting a lot of things done, but it was my mother who was motivating my father to do more than just be a successful musician. She wanted him to get involved in the community and get involved in things that were larger than him. And so she was the one who was really interested in him focusing on hunger and poverty, as well as Rick mentioned. My father got to know Bill Ayers. Actually, Bill Ayers was a DJ on Long Island and had my father on as a guest, and they hit it off. And Bill and Harry started talking about different things they could work on together. And they decided that hunger and poverty was the most important issue that needed to be addressed. And so that led to them, you know, going on this crusade to get as many other people as possible involved in the effort. But my father also made it known that he was inspired by other people, and one of his heroes was Pete Seeger, who was involved in many, many issues over many decades. And, you know, for people in the New York area, he probably is the one person who's most involved in cleaning up the Hudson River. But my father and Pete spent a lot of time together. They did a lot of benefit concerts together, and they were soulmates in a way.
And to the point of not even benefiting himself. You know, from what I was watching in the documentary, like he thought it was enough just by selling whatever, you know, piece of merchandise or signatures. He was okay with that.
Yeah, well, he grew up in a very socially conscious family. All of his relatives in the extended family really spent a lot of time talking about the issues of the day, and they were very informed about different issues, and they felt that it was very important to help where you could. And so I think that there was a motivation in my father from a very early age to do something. He needed to be involved with the important issues. He needed to work with other people who were connected to those issues. And he spent a lot of time with experts learning about hunger and poverty. He spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., talking to members of Congress and working together, which led to the creation of the first Presidential Commission on World Hunger. So it was really something that was part of his upbringing and part of the people that were around him, just knowing that there were important issues, there were important challenges, and to sit back and say, that's not for me, was unacceptable. It was all about getting involved and doing as much as you could.
Now, his death obviously is one of those where it's like you remember where you were, kind of similar to 9/11. Um, can you share your experience? I mean, when you got the news, Rick. For you, Jason, if you want, it's optional.
You want to start, Rick?
sure. I was in college, and I remember getting ready. I played lacrosse in college, and I was getting ready for practice. And my roommate actually told me he had heard about it. He was also from Long Island, and it was like you said, it's one of those days you always remember where you were and what you were doing. He was so important, especially if you grew up on Long Island. He was so important to all of us and to our education. And it was hard to believe because, as Billy Joel said, he was such a vital guy. You know, he was just so energetic. So it was a sad day.
And for me, a little different. I had a summer job, but I was off that day at home, and a couple siblings were home, and my father had already left to do some things that day. And I was planning on going to the benefit concert, free concert he was doing that night at Eisenhower Park on Long Island. But at some point during the day, the phone was ringing a lot, and there were a couple things going on, but there really wasn't a lot of conversation with anybody. It was as though, you know, people were trying to figure out what happened, but no one really knew all the details. And so I found out that afternoon, and, you know, as you can imagine, couldn't have been more shocked and saddened. And it was really rough for a long time.
I'm sure. I cannot share my experience because I was actually born that year. However, his music, you know, like everyone's heard it, you know, the Taxi, Cats in the Cradle. You just kind of grew up with those songs. They're just part of, like, you know, they're popular, you know what it's about in the lyrics. However, this thanks to this documentary, I was able to learn and have a background of the making and the story. So that I thank you both for bringing that up today. So it didn't come sooner. There's a reason why, but if anything, it's kind of reminding that, you know, he did work hard to achieve and has these foundations. And can you talk about them? There's Why Hunger, Long Island Cares, and the Harry Chapin Foundation. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it was again back in '75. He and Bill Ayers, with my mother's support, they created Why Hunger, which really focuses on getting to the grassroots causes of hunger. It's about informing people, educating people, and uniting people. And so they are helping more people in more ways than ever before. And you know, my father's no longer around to support them, but because he planted the seed and so many people were inspired by what he did, you know, there's been a tremendous amount of support to continue the organization. And also Long Island Cares was started in 1980, and that's a major food bank on Long Island. And, you know, through this pandemic, we know how important food banks are, and they're serving more people than ever before. And it's because of the generosity of individuals and corporations and many musicians who have supported the organization over the years. They continue to do outstanding work, and they're growing and providing more services. And the Harry Chapin Foundation was started after my father passed away. And what we do is we do the things that he would have done, which is support community organizations, and we give small grants to organizations that are trying to get off the ground and help them grow, so that they can then go after larger foundation grants and do more work. But you know, we've been helping organizations all across the country for decades now. And it's just amazing what a little bit of support can do for some of these organizations.
And where can people donate?
Well, it's very easy for them to donate, and it's greatly appreciated. If they want to donate to Why Hunger, it's whyhunger.org. If they want to donate to Long Island Cares, it's licares.org. If they want to donate to the Harry Chapin Foundation, it's harrychapinfoundation.org. And the foundation is great because there's a lot of information about my father's life and all of the work that he did, and a lot of great information there. And then we have another website called harrychapinmusic.com, which has a lot of other information and talks about some of the other things that he did in his life and organizations that he supported over his lifetime.
Great. Well, this is a perfect time for that. I'm glad you're sharing that. I mean, people donate and watch the documentary. Just a little bit to cover about the documentary. You had some great artists in there to participate. I mean, you had like some of the people that, you know, admired him and worked with him. Can you share anybody that you missed or couldn't be a part of the documentary, unfortunately?
I think, you know, we have everybody that we needed to get in the film that was closest to Harry, that was inspired by Harry in one way or another. I felt like we jam-packed in about everyone you can get in. The only person that would have been great and the timing didn't work out was Bono, because he would have covered the 90s part of that activism that Harry started. I kind of look at Bob Geldof, Sir Bob, as being the 80s. You know, Harry was the 70s, and We Are the World and so forth. So that was just a timing issue. And I guess the other one who just wasn't well enough to come on camera at the time was Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte and Harry Chapin were very, very close. So and Harry inspired Harry Belafonte. So that would have been great, but honestly, I don't think we could have. Everyone that we asked to do it did it, and that's just, tribute to the person that Harry was.
Yeah, and there are some people who, I wish they were still around because they were incredibly close with my father, and they did a lot of great things together. John Denver and Kenny Rogers. And it would have been great to hear more of their stories. They're in the film, but more of them would have been wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also a mention that, like I said, based on the documentary I learned about, that he actually got a congressional medal. I mean, that's pretty fascinating. And I'm wondering, that medal, do you guys have it, like, is it like at home, someone who has it, or do you guys have it like somewhere displayed, or what is it about?
Yeah, so that was an incredible experience. It was because my father spent so much time in Washington working with members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, Democrats, Republicans, and worked closely with President Carter and his administration. He had a lot of very good relationships. And so it was because of those members of Congress and because of other people in Washington, D.C., that they decided that he deserved the Congressional Gold Medal. And so I'd say, tremendous credit goes to Senator Patrick Leahy, who was an extremely close friend of my father's, and they worked extremely closely together. And so we had an event at Carnegie Hall in 1987, and that's when the presentation of the medal was given, and it was given to my family, and my mother has the medal. But that event was also just another great event where you brought together so many people. So it was all the people in Washington who were part of that, but we had Pat Benatar and Bruce Springsteen and Graham Nash and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and my uncles who performed with my father, and Pete Seeger, and many others that were part of that celebration. A very magical night.
Yes, I mean, that medal made all these others awards seem like a little, just slightly inferior, because I mean, who gets that, right, nowadays?
Yeah, very few musicians, and when they got them as musicians, it was for their music. But I think my father got it for his humanitarian efforts.
For sure. Well, we know we're gonna be seeing this well, everyone else will get to see this documentary as of this Friday, October 16th. And if I'm not mistaken, I heard that it's World Food Day. Was this coincidence, or was it?
No, no, we targeted World Food Day, so it wasn't coincidence. We talked about a couple of different dates, but then when we knew it was World Food Day, it just made all the sense in the world.
You know what? I'm sure your father is thrilled about this, and he's looking from above and is like, you guys are doing it. You guys are living up my legacy. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.